What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Early Wedge here on a Friday on CBS Sports Network. We've got the playoffs. We're in the midst of it, Patrick McDonald, the FedEx St. Jude Championship. We're in the midst of round two. That's a very bad Jim Moore impression. How you doing, buddy?
I thought it was pretty good. I'll give you like a 6.3 out of 10.
I'll
Are
take it.
impersonations a strong suit for you, Mr. Nejad?
They're so not. Yeah, I was
No?
debating whether to go there. I could have gone like playoffs. I feel like that's better, but I
There it
didn't
is.
lean into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you,
Okay.
you really gotta sell it, I think. That was better the second time around. Don't worry.
Appreciate it. Well, listen, Patrick, we're in the midst again of round two, and I'm looking at Scheffler lining up a birdie putt. He's kind of been a little hit or miss, which, for Scotty Scheffler, when you're hit or miss, you're still 2 under par with a chance at 3 under through 11 holes. But you see the top of this leaderboard right now at the FedEx St. Jude at TPC Southwind. Tommy Fleetwood certainly leading the way, but here's Scotty Scheffler's card. You know what's interesting to me, Patrick, is as Scotty just buried a birdie putt to bounce back from the 10th. I mean, it's like when he has a bad round, it's still better than almost everyone. I mean, we can talk about yesterday in terms of Akshay Bhatia and how Tommy Fleetwood acquitted himself, but this guy, Scotty Scheffler, I mean, he's already probably moved to the favorite just after that putt.
Yeah, I mean, just look at that scorecard. He made two bogeys today, and immediately following those bogeys, he has two birdies after both of them, right? King of the bounce back, Scotty Scheffler. But I thought he put it best after his round, Sia, where he thought it was going to be a great round until that finish, kind of stumbled coming in, didn't take advantage of the late par five, and obviously the bogey on the last hole. And he's like, it was a great round that just happened to turn into a solid round. And I feel like that is Scotty Scheffler epitomized, where he still shot 3 under, he still beat the field average by over 2 strokes, he still put himself in position to win this golf tournament. His longest putt that he made was inside 8 feet. Didn't really do much on the greens. He was coasting most of the day before that little stumble there at the end and not taking advantage of the par five. And it's like, all right, this guy is definitely going to be in the mix come Sunday if he does that. And if he actually does have a great round, which he could potentially today if he takes advantage of some of these holes on the back nine, he'll be closer to the top of the leaderboard with Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah, we're certainly going to pepper in some betting conversation throughout this show. And I feel like, Patrick, there was a moment, I think maybe an hour ago, where I believe Scotty was like around 3 under, and my guy Tommy Fleetwood, who I have, granted, in the without Scotty Scheffler market, mind you, but still, if you have any of these guys outright and you saw Scotty at -3, I'm sure some people weren't necessarily breathing a sigh of relief, but were probably thinking, okay, well, maybe he's not going to creep up like he always does. I got to think that at this point, we're so early, but it would be hard to imagine. I can't believe I'm saying this out loud because there's so many people ahead of Scotty right now. It'd be hard to think that Scotty Scheffler doesn't win this tournament. It's Friday, by the way.
Yeah, I think we say that coming into pretty much every tournament, and I think just look at this season, Sia. You could argue it's more consistent than his 2024, which was historic on so many levels, right? He hasn't finished outside the top 25 in 2025, and when he's been 100% healthy, he hasn't finished outside the top 10. And so you look at some of the tournaments where he did only finish inside the top 10. It was like even late in the U.S. Open, there were moments where we were like, is Scotty Scheffler going to somehow win this golf tournament somehow? And late in other tournaments, he has that question kind of circling around the field and circling around the golf course that he still has a chance to win the golf tournament. So, yeah, I would be shocked if he is not in this tournament back nine on Sunday, especially with more juice to squeeze out of his rounds.
Well, I do want to address, who's at the top of the leaderboard. Talk about Akshay's round yesterday, and we got Kurt Kitayama, a 7 under par. He's in the clubhouse right now, finished his round too. But let me ask you this: how do you think this course is playing? And I look at the top of the leaderboard, and if I account for yesterday as well, it does look like a ball striker's paradise, which is what we kind of thought coming in here. But at the same time, you've got other guys in there that, like, the Andrew Novaks, the Justin Roses, that we don't think, maybe the Harry Halls, that aren't necessarily the classic ball strikers. But I am noticing in round two that it does feel like, and I want to get your opinion here, that these greens are firming up, and it's harder, especially coming out of the rough, to stick something 10, 15 feet to the hole or closer because of the greens here. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, new complexes obviously there at TPC Southwind. It usually takes a couple years, I would say, for new greens to really settle in. I think back in 2024, Quail Hollow kind of went through the same process, and we saw at the Wells Fargo Championship just how firm and how bouncy those greens were. And then you add in kind of sticky Bermuda rough that the ball sinks to the bottom of. It's very hard to judge second shots out of, and you're seeing guys who are inaccurate off the tee struggle right now. And Tommy Fleetwood put it very eloquently after his round yesterday. He's like, yeah, it is a second shot golf course, but you need the first shot still. You need to play out of the fairway to make it a second shot golf course. And so you see those names rising up the leaderboard, a lot of tee to green merchants, right? So Siwoo Kim, Kurt Kitayama, not necessarily the best putters on the PGA Tour, but very steady from tee to green. So I totally agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, Siwoo Kim having a terrible putting day right now, or actually that was through round one. Round two, I think he's doing terrible with the putter.
He finished up, I think.
Oh, did he finish up? Okay, fair enough. Let me ask you about Akshay Bhattia's round. I was a guy who was holding a Tommy Fleetwood first round leader ticket, and there was absolutely no sweat because Bhatia goes, what was it, birdie, eagle, birdie to finish out, or maybe it was eagle, birdie, birdie to finish out his round. But Patrick, talk to me about him. Is that the classic ball striker that you were looking for this week? I mean, he certainly kind of crashed and burned last week.
Yeah, I think you look at Batia's season and the underlying metrics have been pretty solid, but the results just haven't been backed up. His last top 10 finish came at the Players Championship all the way back in March when he finished just outside that playoff between JJ Spawn and Rory, of course. And then you look at the 3M Open and he's right in the mix until Sunday with that final round 75. And so I thought it was pretty interesting what he had to say after his round, where we've heard Colin Morikawa kind of say the same thing, kind of the same sentiment, where he's like, I'm looking up my name on the OWGR website. I'm looking up my name in the FedEx Cup points race. I'm looking up my name in the Ryder Cup standings. And he's like, I just told myself, cut it out. You're going to drive yourself insane if you continue to do this. And so it's a young guy. You got to remember, this kid's only 23 years old, just making sure he's sticking to the process. We hear that a lot with Scottie Scheffler, I think. Maybe his brain turned more result oriented these past couple of months, and he's trying to switch to the process orientation that really leads to success on the PGA Tour. And yeah, ball striking wise, I don't think this really came out of nowhere. Just if you look at his numbers, they've been pretty solid in 2025, but it's great to see. And so I am curious what kind of the next 54 holes hold for Bhatia.
I can't believe he's only 23 years old. I mean, he looks insane. 23. But I feel like we've been watching him, and maybe we have, for a good 4 or 5 years now, Patrick, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember this guy skipped college, of course, to become a professional. He went on the Korn Ferry Tour early. He's been on the PGA Tour for a number of seasons now. So it's really I feel like we're approaching a decade of Akshay, to tell you the truth, like kind of 15 crazy. Almost, right? He was in the drive, chip, and putt also at Augusta National. He's the first guy to do that competition and play in the Masters also. That's like a new competition. And so, yeah, it's been pretty much a decade of Bhatia, and he's only 23.
All right, I have to ask you before we go to break. And by the way, I have a couple matchups I want to ask you about on the back end of the break here. That still, there's a lot of guys that are still not out on the course here. At what point do we have to put? And again, I might be jumping the gun here. 7 under par today, Kurt Kitayama. And this guy's a winner, right? At what point do we have to like advance Kurt Kitayama to an upper echelon? We're not there yet, are we?
No. Not an upper echelon. Who is, okay, see, I'll toss it back to you. Who is the bottom of the upper echelon type of player? Like, who would Kurt Kitayama have to leap over to get into the upper echelon?
For some reason, and he's clearly not in this echelon, but for some reason, it's Patrick Cantlay's name that came into my mind, just because he's been so mediocre. But clearly,
that is so rude.
So I'm going to withdraw that. The counselor withdraws that answer. It's a good question. Maybe Adam Scott, somebody like that.
All right. I don't think Kitayama is quite there yet, and maybe he could go on a summer similar to Lucas Glover a couple years back when he won the Wyndham and then won this tournament, obviously. But even with those back-to-back wins, Glover didn't jump into the upper echelon. So need to see more from Kitayama, but obviously a very good round so far today.
Yeah, very, very interesting prospect to maybe finish top 5 or top 10. We're going to be giving you later on in the show some finishing position plays that we like in this tournament, but we still got to catch you up on this round here, round 2, which we're in the middle of. I got some matchups, Patrick, I want to give out. And I got to tell you, there's some FedEx Cup point implications going on. Everybody wants to now. Top 70 we talked about last week. Now everybody wants to get in those signature events, get inside the top 50. Maybe I'll coax a Ryder Cup take or two out of you, Patrick, as well. A lot to come right here as we discuss the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Stick with us on the Early Wedge. We're back on the Early Wedge. I'm joined by Patrick McDonald. And Patrick, I do have a matchup to ask you about. On the Early Edge Morning Show today, I gave out Jacob Bridgman over Ryan Fox at -110. He's got an early lead there. We'll see how that goes. But there's a matchup, Patrick, that's going to go off in like a minute. So maybe somebody's watching it. They got their BetMGM app open or what have you. Talk to me about Cam Young over Shane Lowry, -110.
All day.
Thoughts?
All day,
All day.
son.
Let's go.
Not to quote, I know we got into the sitcoms the other week on the Early Wedge. All day, son. But look, Cam Young yesterday putted horribly. Just horrific day on and around the greens. And I think the stigma around Cam Young for most of his career, Sia, was obviously he's a very poor putter. Entering this week, he's number 6 on the PGA Tour in strokes gained putting. And so you have a guy who putted poorly, a guy who ranked second only to Akshay Bhatia in terms of ball striking, who's in a wave of form right now, versus Shane Lowry, who has been quite poor really ever since the Truist Championship. So give me Cam Young all day.
Yeah, you still have about 30 seconds to get this one in if you want to. And by the way, speaking of sitcoms, we won't go down that road, but we did a top 5 sitcom characters of all time on the Twitter, Patrick. If you all have a top 5 you're watching at home, you have a top 5 sitcoms characters of all time, tweet at me or Patrick McDonald or SportsLine. Let us know who your top 5 are. Okay, so there's a good and a bad. There's some guys getting out on the course right now, including Cam Young and Shane Lowry. But there's a guy that's about to finish up his round who a lot of people were down on, not just for this tournament and the playoffs in general, but also for a Ryder Cup spot. Now, Colin Morikawa always had his Ryder Cup spot, right? But he's played pretty well through basically 2 rounds now. Your thoughts on how Colin Morikawa has done through 2?
You know, he got it done in an unorthodox method yesterday for Colin Morikawa, where it was a lot of short game, a lot of putting. The wedge play, surprisingly, was quite poor, especially on that back 9. He had some scoring opportunities, I would say, and just did not give himself realistic birdie chances with a wedge in play. And we know Colin Morikawa throughout the iron set is one of the best in the world. And then today it's kind of been the polar opposite, where he hasn't made much. Luckily on number 9, when you're holing out from the fairway, you don't need your putter, and that's obviously going to pad the approach numbers. So it's a welcome sight, I would say. I think people maybe overreacted to 2 weeks across the pond playing a different style of golf, where he missed the cut at the Scottish Open, missed the cut at the Open Championship as well. I think across the first 2 rounds, he played with Scottie Scheffler. See, he lost to the world number 1, I think, by like 18 strokes or something. He lost half a stroke to Scottie Scheffler on every single hole that he played at Royal Portrush. But this is a great golf course for him. I think Justin Ray had a stat saying since 2022, maybe, he's the most under par at TPC Southwind. And we talked about how you got to put the ball in the fairway. Colin Morikawa is still one of the most accurate drivers in the world. And you piece it all together and you have a performance like this through 30-some-odd holes right now.
So we go from the good to the bad, because I got to point out one of the hottest golfers in the world right now is Chris Gotterup, and he's in second to last place. He's only not in last place because Min-Woo Lee was just so incredibly bad yesterday and hasn't been much better today. I believe he's 3 over par today, Chris Gotterup, leading to a 5 over par altogether here through 2 rounds, or he's finishing up his second round, I believe. Gotterup was a name that people were talking about to put on the Ryder Cup team. And I get it. Like I was kind of on board there too, although I wasn't really too strident with my opinions. But is this the type of thing where Gotterup's so bad this week that we can kind of like maybe put that to bed?
I don't think you can put that to bed just with 2 rounds or 4 rounds, I would say, because you got to remember this competition is still over a month and a half away, and so form is always fleeting in this game, but you can discover it in a snap of a finger, pretty much. I mean, you could just say that with Colin Morikawa, for instance, coming off a bad run there across the pond. And so I think with Gotterup, This isn't the best course fit for him. A guy who leans heavily on the driver, a guy whose course management, I think, has improved a lot in 2025. I think that's been the real catalyst for him, not necessarily getting better tangibly with his irons or with his short game or anything. Sure, he's made strides in those departments, but I think the big thing for Goddard so far this year is he's learned how to play PGA Tour golf courses, which are different than Korn Ferry Tour golf courses where you just pin your ears back, you go for every single pin, you try to get to 25, 30 under, and you hope a couple times throughout the year you really explode on the greens, and then boom, you have your PGA Tour card by that. And on the PGA Tour, it's a little bit different where you can really get yourself in trouble if you play like that. And so I think the course management's been better. Today's obviously been a brutal day for him. He's bleeding 5 strokes to the field with his irons alone, which is not a great sight if you're in the Chris Goddard camp. But I'm not willing to say he's off the U.S. Ryder Cup team for sure, just with, we're still pretty far out, I think.
Well, I guess that my follow-up would be the only reason I was so reactionary with Chris Goddard is because I don't know if you were already kind of like Goddard's on the outside looking in, or he's on the inside, kind of tucked nicely in that 11th or 12th spot. Did you have Goddard on your Ryder Cup team prior to this tournament?
I did. And I think
Okay.
I had 3 players or 4 players in 3 spots, with it being Keegan, Goddard, Griffin, and Young for 3 spots there. And I think, if Keegan doesn't play, maybe that'll give someone like a Chris Goddard a spot on the team. And if Keegan does play, maybe that's taking the Chris Goddard spot on the team. But Goddard was one of my guys just because I think Bethpage is certainly a better fit than TPC Southwind for him.
Okay, let's talk about one of those other guys who's getting out on the course at 135. Ben Griffin and Harris English. This was another lean I had on the early edge. Actually, it was a lean I had, but Chip Patterson gave it out as one of his official picks. Ben Griffin over Harris English in that minus 110 range as well. Ben Griffin, again, probably on the Ryder Cup team, but does he have a shot to kind of crawl back into this tournament and scare the lead here?
Yeah, I mean, he's what, 4 under? So beginning the day or sleeping only 4 strokes off the lead of Batia, now going to be half a dozen back of Fleetwood, whatever the lead is at the moment. But the PGA Tour kind of did something cool on social where they followed him leading up to this tournament, kind of his morning routine, what he did before his round, his warm up, his stretching, all that jazz. And he is a very confident guy, I would say, right now. And he kind of joked to Keegan Bradley, like, oh, pick me, pick me. And he's like, I'm just kidding. I'm going to play myself onto this Ryder Cup team by points. I'm not going to even need a pick. And I talked to him before he missed the cut at the John Deere Classic and kind of went on a little bit of a skid. I don't know if those are correlated, Sia. They probably are. And you could just like sense the confidence oozing off this guy and how his ability to stay in his own bubble and just worry about himself and really nothing else is such a skill set, I think, on the PGA Tour. And so yesterday, obviously, had a great putting day, gaining over 2 strokes to the field. Iron play lagged behind a little bit, but this is a guy who has been able to showcase his skill sets on shorter golf courses throughout his career, despite all this added distance that he's added in 2025. So yeah, he is definitely live to win this golf tournament.
All right. I know you think another guy is live potentially to win this golf tournament. One of your favorite golfers, Russell Henley. We're gonna come back from break. We're gonna talk about Russell Henley. We're gonna talk about this leaderboard as Colin Morikawa was on the 16th, and he's got to get up and down for birdie. He's at 8 under. So this leaderboard is getting crowded at the top. A lot to talk about, including who's going to make this top 50, who's on the bubble, and who isn't. Patrick McDonald, Nejad, early wedge, right after the break. We're back on the early wedge on CBS Sports Network. Patrick McDonald, we got to talk about the FedEx Cup playoffs and the standings themselves, because one thing that is very fluid outside of the scores themselves that we're talking about and seeing is the FedEx Cup standings and the projections. So everybody wants to get inside the top 50. Obviously, everybody wanted to get in the top 70 to play in this tournament. But the top 50 actually means quite a bit. As we look at the bubble, Patrick, talk to me about what it means for these golfers to be playing next week.
Yeah, I think you could say the top 50 almost means more than the top 30, especially with the ability to pick and choose your schedule, because the top 50, those who qualify for the BMW Championship, that means you're in all 8 signature events in 2026. You can really pick your schedule around those big money events, and there's almost a cushion, Sia, by playing in those events, not only with the guaranteed money, but elevated and guaranteed FedEx Cup points too, because most of those signature events, as we know, and as we have bemoaned countless times, they don't have a cut. And so you're almost guaranteed a little bit of a bump. And so that's why it means so much. There's obviously other mechanisms in season to get into those signature events, whether it is like the Aeon Swing 5 or through the fall with the 10. Also, if you're top 30 in the OWGR, you can get into those events too, which maybe players like Jordan Spieth, if he falls out, that could be a way for him. But yeah, the top 50 has really turned into the cutoff, I think, when it comes to the FedEx Cup playoffs.
Let's talk about Jordan Spieth, and because he's sort of on that line. He's currently on the outside looking in. Guys like, I think he is. Yeah, he's 52 right now. He's +1 on his round. So if he can rebound on the back 9, he can probably tuck himself inside the 50 or right at that 50 mark. Minwoo Lee, Patrick, did everybody pretty big favor by completely ejecting. He was 50th coming into this tournament. Guys like Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, obviously the PGA Tour fans want those guys to not have to get sponsors exemptions, at the signature events next year, especially in Ricky's case. But how do you think they're feeling? You think they're feeling the pressure here, being on the outside looking in?
Oh, yeah. I would say especially Ricky, like you mentioned. Jordan talked about it last week, how he knows stress is going to be coming this week and potentially BMW Championship. He has a lot to play for, not only trying to play himself into the signature events, but potentially the Ryder Cup team if he makes a run during the postseason. That could potentially be live. But you look at Ricky Fowler, see it compared to Jordan Spieth. Fowler's not in major championships like Spieth is. Spieth has won 3, so he's in those 3 major championships. He's still inside the top 50 in the OWGR. Ricky Fowler has really plummeted in the OWGR also. He didn't play in the Masters this year. He had to get into the Open kind of through an odd mechanism where he got a sponsor's invite into the Memorial, and then at the Memorial he finished high enough in an Open qualifying series event to punch his ticket into the Open, and then he obviously had a solid finish at the Open, but without that sponsor's invite, Ricky Fowler's not even in the Open. And so I think it means a lot more for someone like Ricky Fowler to play himself into this signature events and not have to rely on the sponsor invites, and as opposed to Jordan Spieth, who he said last week he needs one off season, and he feels like he'll be back to 100% following that wrist injury last year.
Yeah, it does feel like Spieth has a pretty solid excuse with his injury last year, kind of playing that into this year as well. So I expect Spieth to be much better next year than what he's been this year and last year. Xander Schauffele, 2 over through his second round. He's actually, and by the way, Xander Schauffele was injured to start the season, so there is that. But he's currently projected at 48th, and if this thing continues to go a little sideways, I think people might be shocked to learn, Patrick, that he could be on the outside looking in after this tournament.
Absolutely. And you look at his season, it hasn't really been poor, but it hasn't been great. It's been a lot of, I would say, second, third, fourth page of the leaderboard finishes. He had a good run overseas with top 10 finishes at the Scottish Open and the Open, honestly, and that did a lot to buoy him inside the top 50 because he was outside the top 60 going into that stretch, Xander Schauffele, that is. And so I think for him, it would be a shock, especially when everyone has almost made Schauffele synonymous with Eastlake, with how much success he's had there. He has played there every year of his career. He won the Tour Championship, not the FedEx Cup, but the Tour Championship when they had 2 winners. His rookie season in 2017 when JT won the FedEx Cup playoffs. He has finished runner-up, I think, 3 or 4 times as well. And so he's just a staple inside the top 5 at Eastlake. And all of a sudden it'd be like, Xander Schauffele's not even at the BMW Championship. And so it would be very surprising, especially when you think he is the world number 3.
Another guy that's very much on the line in the middle of his round is Wyndham Clark. I think he is currently projected in that sort of 47th range. So, I mean, big names. Tony Finau, Patrick, is not, I mean, unless he goes absolutely ballistic through rounds 3 and 4, he's not going to make the top 50 either. I mean, which of these names are you most surprised by? Jordan Spieth, you're not super surprised by. Ricky Fowler, I mean, he's on the fringe here. Is it Tony Finau? It's got to be Xander, but some of these names, Wyndham Clark might not make this thing either. It's just going to be a different look at the BMW Championship with some of these household names not there.
Yeah, I think I would be most surprised if Ricky played himself in, just because it hasn't really been a great couple of years. Really, ever since 2023, he's been on the downturn. Unfortunately, like you mentioned, Xander would be a massive shock. Spieth, I honestly thought he'd maintain his place inside the top 50. Obviously, still can, and I do think he will play himself into the BMW Championship. Wyndham Clark is an interesting case where he has been bad most of 2025, outside of, say, the Travelers Championship and on. It's like he broke a locker at Oakmont, and that unleashed his actual playing ability, or something like that happened, where something happened in that locker room in Pittsburgh, and Wyndham Clark became a real professional golfer again. He talked about it yesterday, where he's kind of going back to some old habits that led to success in 23 and 24. He felt like expectations from those seasons really hampered down on him this year, where he raised his own expectations. And when you do that, Sia, of course you don't play as well, right? You have so much to lose, you think, in your mind. Every shot's weighing more on you, and you don't play as well. You don't play as freely. And so he's gone back to some old habits that have worked out this past month or so. And the iron play has really come alive for him. So he's playing with Jordan Spieth. I think that's such an interesting group to follow if you're really interested in this FedEx Cup playoffs, because both of these guys have obviously a ton to play for, and both of these guys are people or golfers that people want to see next week at Caves Valley.
Yeah, maybe you have that on and that grouping on in the background as you watch this show. Or when this show is over, you go watch Wyndham Clark and Jordan Spieth. Can I ask you about, obviously we got the BMW Championship, which is the top 50, and then we've got the actual Tour Championship, which is going to be the top 30. Do you have an opinion on this non-staggered start situation? And do you think, just a second follow-up question, do you think this is going to be the situation next year as well?
I don't. I think it's a bridge year when it comes to the Tour Championship for a number of reasons. One, the decision came, what is that, 3 months ago now? They did it in the middle of the season. And two, with the new PGA Tour CEO, Brian Rolapp, I think this has to be high on his to-do lists as his regime kind of begins, is how do I elevate the FedEx Cup playoffs? How do I make it in actual playoffs? How do I make it must-see TV, as opposed to really what it is here right now, which is a money grab for the best players on the PGA Tour, right? There are no real stakes, I would say, for the top 15 players on the PGA Tour, which is kind of backwards when it comes to playoffs. All the stakes are on the bottom level of the PGA Tour, making it into the top 70, making it inside the top 50, making it inside the top 30. It's not about winning. It's about making it just barely inside the cut line. And so he kind of needs to flip that on his head, I think. And so I do think this is kind of one and done, and they'll try something else in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how uninteresting it is to me. I mean, not the playoffs. I'm actually still intrigued by it, but the money at the end of it, I don't care about. If you're winning 10, 20, $25 million, that's not intriguing to me at all. So I completely agree. Well, Patrick, I'm going to give you 60 seconds or less because we've got to go to a break. 60 seconds or less, you got to tell me how to fix it in 60 seconds.
That's so easy. We mentioned this on the show this week. I think you go Tour de France style, cumulative leaderboard and stage winners / tournament winners, where each section of the playoff obviously affects the next section also. And so someone like Rory McIlroy, who did not play this week, if you miss out on the first stage or first tournament, well, you can't win the playoffs because you're disqualified for that reason. So cumulative leaderboard throughout the postseason, combined with stage winners and tournament winners for those three. And they need to kind of change the venues, I think, for the first for the FedEx Cup St. Jude and the Tour Championship, because I think the venues are a little stale right now.
Well, I thought you were being facetious when you said that's easy, and you actually answered the questions in less than 60 seconds. So very, very impressive. Does feel like a pretty good solution, folks. All right, you did mention the early wedge earlier in the week. We've got the betting show, DFS show. We got the live chat. Well, a lot of betting on this show, whether it's on the network or on the SportsLine YouTube channel. And when we come back from break, we're going to actually take a look at the betting board and talk about some players that we're supporting in the finishing position market, maybe the outright market and otherwise. Stick with us. Me and Patrick McDonald, the early wedge on CBS Sports Network. We're back on the Early Wedge on CBS Sports Network. Patrick, we got to get to this betting board here. We got to look at maybe some finishing positions, what the outright board is looking like. As I saw when we were break, Fleetwood made a birdie. We had Scheffler with a birdie. Fleetwood on top here. But can we just do an aside real quick? Because when we were coming back from commercial, I could have sworn you were asking me, because I cover some NFL stuff too, about Pittsburgh, the Steelers. That's your team, right?
That is my team, of course. I've been a longtime Steelers fan. Grew up going to games, still go to games, and can't wait for us to finish 9-8 this year and bow out in the wild card round.
Yeah, well, the line's 8.5 plus money to the over. I actually kind of, I think they're sneaky. Yeah, look at you. I kind of like the 9 wins, but we're gonna have to see how those first few games go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's get back to the betting board, though. Okay, so what we're looking at now is Tommy Fleetwood is the leader here. Plus 150 are the odds there. We've got Scotty Scheffler right behind him at plus 210. And then there's a pretty big break. Colin Morikawa's got a couple of holes left. He's 9 under, 3 back of Tommy Fleetwood. But Morikawa is in that 10-1 range, as is Akshay Bhatia. And then there's another big drop-off to Kurt Kitayama. And then, of course, Patrick, there's the without market, which people can take without Scotty. They can take without Scotty and Fleetwood. How would you attack, from an outright perspective, what has your interest?
Well, I would say I believe Scotty Scheffler just got to 8 under par with another birdie on the par 3 14th, which is a tough hole. Second of the tournament already. He's played that hole in 4 strokes, which guys do in one day typically. I think this is a great spot to buy someone not named Tommy Fleetwood. Honestly, Tommy Fleetwood, with still more than half of this tournament to play, is plus 150. I don't care how many strokes he's up at that point. This is a great opportunity to buy someone else. I know he's entering a scoring stretch, which means, okay, maybe he could extend his current 3-stroke lead to 4 or 5. 15, he's going to have a wedge. 16 is a par 5, obviously. And we saw what he did on that stretch yesterday, playing it in 4 under those final 4 holes, that is. And so I'm looking at someone who maybe hasn't teed off yet, or maybe is still early in their round, someone you think could shoot something like 63, 64. The scoring average is pretty similar to what it was yesterday. The conditions are as well. So I think it's a great chance to buy low on someone, with Fleetwood occupying, plus 150 is nuts to me.
It's tremendously short. A BetMGM, I'm just checking again, it's plus 138. Like listen, I bet Fleetwood in the without Scotty Scheffler market, but as a Fleetwood backer, I command you not to take that number. But you're right. He could extend the lead, but still, I command you. It's still Tommy Fleetwood at the end of the day. Well, okay, talk to me about Russell Henley, because I look down the board, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Russell is just about to tee off or hasn't teed off yet. Russell Henley, Ben Griffin, just getting out onto the course. They're 33 and 35 to 1. Those are the types of guys that could maybe put a low number up in round 2.
Yeah, I love Russell Henley. He was my pick at the beginning of the week. He was 30 to 1 at the beginning of the week. He shot 4 under yesterday. He beat the field average by 3 strokes. He did absolutely nothing wrong. And by the time he's teeing off, he's longer on the odds board. As you see, he was 18 to 1 overnight, and all of a sudden that price has pretty much doubled because Tommy Fleetwood's had a nice second round. So I love Henley every which way. If you want to be more conservative and maybe do a placement bet like a top 10 or top 20, fine, that's good by me. But I think he has a real potential to go out there today, get into kind of those later tee times on Saturday, maybe within 3 or 4 of Fleetwood, and kind of make a weekend charge from there.
Can I interest you in a without market Russell Henley at around 12 to 1 or Griffin in 16 to 1? When I say without, I'm saying without Scotty, without Xander, which of course doesn't really matter, JT and Fleetwood. So effectively you're taking Scotty and Fleetwood out of the mix, and you're getting Henley at 12 to 1 to finish behind them or ahead of them. It doesn't matter.
That is pretty interesting, especially since Tommy Fleetwood just threw 1 to 4 feet on 15. But now, you know me, the without market, that's your game. I'm going to let you do the without market. I'm going to let you win all the money you want. But when I finally win a bet, I can say I stood up to the big bad Scotty Scheffler and Tommy Fleetwood this week. But unfortunately, my wins, of course, are a bit more rare than yours.
Well, you've hit a lot of picks on the early wedge, or a lot of outrights on the early wedge, but at the end of the day, why take on Scotty Scheffler? It just doesn't make sense to me to take on Scotty Scheffler at this point in the season. He's done the work for us. Don't take me on, is what he's telling us.
Yeah, I think it's me being greedy, of course, and it's like, okay, I can get Russell Henley at 16-1 or double that price. Give me double that price every day of the week. And obviously, it has not been a fruitful strategy this summer. But one time at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, it paid off. So I'm looking at the good, Sia, not necessarily all the bad. There is a ton when it comes to Scotty Scheffler and his laundry list of wins across these last few seasons.
I'm looking to my left because I'm watching Collin Morikawa tee off at 9 under. He just saved par in a pretty nice way with a somewhat long putt, touchy putt. I think it was beyond 10 feet, but he's in the fairway on 18. So it looks like he's going to be 9 or 10 under. Very interesting that Collin Morikawa is in this conversation, which again, we talked about it earlier, Patrick. We're not super surprised by that. But I mean, he has not exactly been in the conversation lately. So I think it's kind of cool with some guys stumbling for Collin Morikawa to kind of step up and be in the conversation through 2 days. Talk to me about a finishing position bet. Maybe top 20, top 10. And these are ever changing. I know we considered these before the show. I liked Ben Griffin as a top 10 at plus 120. I think that's a pretty fair number on a guy that has 3 days to go low, and 2 of those 3 days he goes low, he'll be nicely tucked inside the top 10. Anything in the top 10, top 20 market that you like?
I went with another guy who went to school in the state of North Carolina, in last week's winner, Cameron Young. I think top 20 was 2-1 overnight, and he was just outside that mark, played the first round in 1 under par fashion, and it just felt like he had so much juice to squeeze out of that first round. Like I mentioned, the short game was abysmal. That's been a huge improvement for him both on and around the greens in 2025. He played the 2 par 5s in even par. He got off to a very poor start. The first 3-4 holes, they're kind of gettable there at TPC Southwind. These guys would prefer to be under par during that stretch before they kind of hit a more difficult middle portion of this round before another scoring stretch there at the end. It felt like he did all the easy stuff hard yesterday. He made all the easy stuff very difficult yesterday, and all the hard stuff he excelled at. So I think Cam Young beginning the day just outside the top 20 with a great ball striking performance in round 1. He can carry that over. He hit 10 fairways yesterday. Sia, if he does that over these next 3 rounds, I think he'll coast inside the top 20.
Yeah, I really like the state of Cameron Young's game. You did have him inside. No, you didn't. He's not on your Ryder Cup team, correct?
Ben Griffin's not on my Ryder Cup team as of now, which I think Ben Griffin's going to be on the Ryder Cup team.
You think which one? Ben's going to be on the Ryder Cup, but Cameron Young's not going to be on the Ryder Cup?
Ben's not on my Ryder Cup team, which obviously matters. Okay. But I think Ben will be on the Ryder Cup team, which might matter more to him.
Can Cameron Young, in your mind, on your team, play himself in?
Cam Young is going to be on this Ryder Cup team, I think. Yeah. And he's also on my Ryder Cup team. I know a lot of people are probably confused between the my and the, but Cam Young is on both the and my. And I think I don't want to look too far ahead, Sia. I could see Cam Young and Collin Morikawa being a very good pairing there at Bethpage Black.
Very interesting. Well, if Keegan's on the team and he cedes captain responsibilities to, I know he has co-captains, but maybe you could get involved in planning that strategy. Have you talked to him?
We haven't, but I think with how flustered my brain is right now between the and the my, he's probably watching this in between his shots at TPC Southwind, and it's like, yeah, I might look elsewhere.
No, it's not you being flustered. It's me asking you the same exact question 3 times in the same exact way, and you're like, start to question yourself. And by the way, from an outright standpoint, because I know you gave out Russell Henley, I wanted to give out Tommy Fleetwood, but he's like playing too well as he's lining up a putt. You're a little bit ahead of me. He just drained it. He's 30. So I'm not going to give out, like, again, before the show, I thought I could give out Tommy Fleetwood at like somewhat of a decent number with Scotty chasing him down. Right now, you're looking at something like closer to even money than anything else. So I'm not going to give that play out, but I do like Griffin as a top 10. And I do like somebody like a Russell Henley or Ben Griffin in that without market if you can find it. All right. Well, we gotta get to a break. We got to come back and just take an accounting of what's going out on the course right now as Scotty finds himself in the rough on 15 and maybe some storylines heading into the weekend. We'll be back on the Early Wedge. We are back on the early wedge as I'm staring down Scottie Scheffler putting off the green slightly. Oh, he's chipping slightly off the green on 15. That's probably going to be a par, or knowing Scottie, it's probably going to get birdie, chip in. Patrick, talk to me. We got a few minutes left on the show. Talk to me about maybe a storyline that you're focused on today and through the weekend.
Yeah, it's not necessarily anything to do with the FedEx Cup playoffs or even the Ryder Cup, but I'm interested to see if Collin Morikawa sticks with his new caddy. It's Tony Finau's old caddy. They're a longtime partnership. Morikawa has obviously gone through a number of them in 2025, starting with J.J. Jakovic, going to Joe Griner, going to his buddy, the Billy Foster experiment there at the Scottish Open and the Open. Obviously not fruitful given that they missed both of the cuts there. And so I think this guy just needs a little bit of continuity in his game right now. And I think a caddy, a steady caddy, a guy who's going to be there week after week, it might not mean a lot to other players, but I think for Collin Morikawa at this stage, it does. So I'm interested to see just how long this relationship will last between Morikawa and his new caddy. And obviously, Sia, it's off to a great start through 36 holes.
Great start. I think he's finishing up on 18 now. And by the way, that chip did not go well for him. He's going to be putting from quite the distance. I'm just guessing 15-ish feet, 15 plus for a par. So maybe he drops a shot here, which Patrick begs the question, because my storyline would be who's getting inside this top 50. I think it's super compelling. I think we should be square, the broadcast and everything. I'm sure they're going to be talking about it, especially on Sunday. But I think when you're talking about names like Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler and some of the other names, that Wyndham Clark that we discussed, I think that is really intriguing, interesting stuff. With that said, one storyline is certainly going to be, is Tommy Fleetwood going to win a tournament, Patrick? I mean, your thoughts on how this is going. I know it's early and I know it's Tommy Fleetwood, but Scheffler might, bogey here, and he might end up 7-8 shots back by the end of the day. Well, probably not. Probably 6 or 7 shots back by the end of the day, potentially.
Well, look, this is a betting show, Sia, and ever since I laughed at Tommy Fleetwood being plus 150, he has shortened to even money. So I have that effect on the board from time to time. And so Scheffler, you were spot on. It was 15 feet, 2 inches. Missed the putt there, back down to 7 under. Another closing stretch where it really hasn't gone his way if he continues on this path. But wouldn't it be something 1 week after Cameron Young wins that Tommy Fleetwood then wins the following week? It'd be almost poetic, I feel like. So I'm not putting it past Fleetwood. I just think we have to get to the back nine on Sunday, Sia, before the dream starts to become more and more real. And even then, we got to wait till the final putt drop.
Patrick, speaking of waiting for the final putt to drop, pretty sure Morikawa just birdied 18 after you singing his praises. So I think the jinx is completely in effect. It might have been a birdie putt. I just know he missed. I don't know. I'm sorry. It was a par putt. Okay, he's fine. The jinx isn't there. Let me ask you this. We got about 60 seconds left, Patrick. More like 30, 45 seconds. If I hit Tommy Fleetwood in the without Scottie Scheffler market, can I even celebrate it if he actually wins outright? Do I have to be super shy on Twitter about celebrating?
No. Flaunt it. Peacock all you want. I don't care, right? Betting's hard enough. When you get a win, you got to celebrate it. And look, Sia, he's got 25 feet for eagle coming up on 16, so that lead's about to extend. Tommy Fleetwood, first-time PGA Tour winner. It's becoming more and more real as this tournament gets into the deep of it.
Yeah, I have in my big DFS lineup, I've got Chris Goddard up. He's really weighing me down. My other guys are doing pretty well. You can catch all our, I know. You can catch all our outrights on the early wedge. Patrick is on there all the time, and it'll be on there Sunday morning at 10:30 when we take you through live round 4 action. We set up all our best bets. Again, that's 10:30 on the SportsLine YouTube channel Sunday morning. We come at you 4 days a week. Have a great weekend, everybody, from everyone at the early wedge.